Hello, we are talking about history of the Holocaust. An introduction. The Holocaust, also called Shoah in Hebrew, refers to the period from January 30th, 1933, when Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, to May 8th, 1945, the day when the war in Europe ended. During this time, Jews in Europe were subjected to progressively harsh persecution that ultimately led to the murder of 6 million Jews, 1.5 million of these being children, and the destruction of 5,000 Jewish communities. These deaths represented two-thirds of European Jewry and one-third of world Jewry. The Jews who died were not casualties of the fighting that ravaged Europe during World War II. Rather, they were the victims of Germany's deliberate and systematic attempt to annihilate the entire Jewish population of Europe, a plan Hitler called the final solution. After its defeat in World War I, Germany was humiliated by the Versailles Treaty, which reduced its pre-war territory, drastically reduced its armed forces, demanded the recognition of its guilt for the war, and stipulated it pay reparations to the Allied powers. The German Empire destroyed, a new parliamentary government called the Weimar Republic was formed. The republic suffered from economic instability, which grew worse during the worldwide depression after the New York stock market crash in 1929. Massive inflation followed by very high unemployment heightened existing class and political differences, and began to undermine the government. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler, leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Nazi Party, was named Chancellor by President Paul von Hindenburg after the Nazi Party won a significant percentage of the vote in the elections of 1932. The Nazi Party had taken advantage of the political unrest in Germany to gain an electoral foothold. The Nazis incited clashes with the Communists, who many feared, disrupted the government with demonstrations, and conducted a vicious propaganda campaign against its political opponents, the weak Weimar government, and the Jews, whom the Nazis blamed for Germany's ills. Propaganda: the Jews are our misfortune. A major tool of the Nazis' propaganda assault was the weekly Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer, the attacker. At the bottom of the front page of each issue, in bold letters, the paper proclaimed, "The Jews are our misfortune." Der Stürmer also regularly featured cartoons of Jews in which they were caricatured as hook-nosed and ape-like. The influence of the newspaper was far-reaching. By 1938 about 500,000 copies were distributed weekly. Soon after he became Chancellor, Hitler called for new elections in an effort to get full control of the Reichstag, the German parliament, for the Nazis. The Nazis used the government apparatus to terrorize the other parties. They arrested their leaders and banned their political meetings. Then, in the midst of the election campaign, on February 27, 1933, the Reichstag building burned. A Dutchman named Marinus van der Lubbe was arrested for the crime, and he swore he had acted alone. Although many suspected the Nazis were ultimately responsible for the act, the Nazis managed to blame the Communists, thus turning more votes their way. The fire signaled the demise of German democracy. On the next day, the government, under the pretense of controlling the Communists, abolished individual rights and protections. Freedom of the press, assembly, and expression were nullified, as well as the right to privacy. When the elections were held on March 5, the Nazis received nearly 44% of the vote, and with 8% offered by the Conservatives, won a majority in the government. The Nazis moved swiftly to consolidate their power into a dictatorship. On March 23, the Enabling Act was passed. It sanctioned Hitler's dictatorial efforts and legally enabled him to pursue them further. The Nazis marshaled their formidable propaganda machine to silence their critics. They also developed a sophisticated police and military force, the Sturmabteilung, SA, Stormtroopers, a grassroots organization, helped Hitler undermine the German democracy. The Gestapo, Geheimstaatspolizei, secret state police, a force recruited from professional police officers, was given complete freedom to arrest anyone after February 28. The Schutzstaffel, SS, protection squad, served as Hitler's personal bodyguard and eventually controlled the concentration camps and the Gestapo. The Sicherheitsdienst der Reichsführers SS, SD, security service of the SS, functioned as the Nazis' intelligence service, uncovering enemies and keeping them under surveillance. With this police infrastructure in place, opponents of the Nazis were terrorized, beaten, or sent to one of the concentration camps the Germans built to incarcerate them. Dachau, just outside of Munich, was the first such camp built for political prisoners. Dachau's purpose changed over time and eventually became another brutal concentration camp for Jews. By the end of 1934, Hitler was in absolute control of Germany, and his campaign against the Jews in full swing. The Nazis claimed the Jews corrupted pure German culture with their foreign and mongrel influence. They portrayed the Jews as evil and cowardly, and Germans as hard-working, courageous, and honest. The Jews, the Nazis claimed, who were heavily represented in finance, commerce, the press, literature, theater, and the arts, had weakened Germany's economy and culture. The massive government-supported propaganda machine created a racial anti-Semitism, which was different from the long-standing anti-Semitic tradition of the Christian churches. Thank you, goodbye.